Scene one, take one. Welcome to Harker's Teardowns, the Motherboard edition. Today I'm going to talk about what the circuitry on a motherboard is. You can look at this motherboard and it has a lot of different circuits on it, but it turns out it's actually pretty straightforward these days. I recently tore down a Dell tower, and this motherboard came out of it. It's a nice big motherboard with things sort of generously laid out. The core of it is the CPU, of course. It's where all the processing occurs. But the CPU doesn't actually talk to very many things directly. Instead, it talks to a north bridge and a south bridge. The north bridge is responsible for the high speed, high bandwidth, high bus width interconnects. So it talks to the memory, and it also talks to the high speed PCIe buses. This is actually a relatively old motherboard because it has two old PCI without the E slot. The south bridge, it handles pretty much everything else. So the south bridge handles the SATA disk interfaces. It handles the video interface. It handles the front panel, which is actually on this nice jack here. It handles the old floppy controller. Remember floppy drives? Many of you have never touched one probably. It even handles this little onboard speaker for alerts. Networking is typically implemented as a separate chip because networking is well integrated in silicon and is inexpensive. It also talks to the magnetics, and the magnetics talk to the RJ45, which is what your Ethernet cable is plugged into. The magnetics are there to protect the board in case something goes wrong with the RJ45 cable. The next piece is the audio. Audio is typically a separate chip because audio is very sensitive to digital noise. So they typically make it an isolated section of the motherboard, very close to the audio I/O ports. The last set of components are what are called buck converters. A buck converter converts a higher voltage into a lower voltage. And a buck converter typically consists of an inductor, a couple of MOSFETs, these are field effect transistors, and some capacitors. And basically it drops the voltage down. CPUs typically require three different voltages: 3.3 volts, 3 volts, and 1.5 volts. In addition, the memory has its own little buck converter to convert voltage for the memory. There also is a pair of buck converters here providing voltages for the PCIe and the old PCI buses. This is the main power connector where all the power comes into the motherboard, and then there's an additional 5-volt power connector because CPUs now take a lot of 5-volt power. It may be that it takes like 5 or 10 amps of power. And that's a tour of the motherboard. So can I do it again? So here we have a less expensive motherboard. It has an AMD CPU. It has a north bridge which controls the memory and the PCIe bus. This is a low-cost board, so it has a custom south bridge. This is an ASUS part with a lot of things integrated into it. The ASUS part controls the video port. It controls the SATA ports, the disk drive ports. It controls the floppy drive again, remember that. The little speaker that's on board. It controls the various lights on the front panel, etc. Then again, we have the networking port here, and we have the networking chip here. In this case, I suspect that the magnetics are actually built into the jack itself. And then finally, we have the sound chips, again sort of isolated off on its own space right next to, as we saw earlier, the audio I/O ports. We have our buck converters. So here we have the CPU. We have, in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4 different buck converters. Actually, this one might be associated with the bus. I'm not sure. Again, 3.3, 3 volts, and 1.5 volts. We have a buck converter for the memory. We have a buck converter for the bus, And as I said, I think this might actually be part of the bus there. And that's a tour of a smaller motherboard. They're not so hard once you learn how to look at them. This has been Harker's Teardown, the Motherboard Edition.